This is my last attempt. 5 words buried at the end of a homework essay. 5 words that would bring 310 motorcycles to a quiet suburban street. For 7 months, 15-year-old Autumn had been hiding cries for help in her assignments. 7 adults graded those essays and missed every sign. Until the 8th teacher opened her email at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday night. Rachel Martinez wasn't just a tutor. She was a Hell's Angel, and she understood exactly what my last attempt meant. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay connected with stories like this, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. I always love seeing how far these stories reach. Now, here's what happened next. Please, you said in your last message that you noticed I write about captivity. You're right, because I live it. Every single day. Those were the last words Autumn Riley Hoffman typed before hitting submit on the essay that would change everything. Her hands shook as her finger hovered over the button. This was it. Her final attempt. 7 months of coded messages that went unread. 7 months of teachers correcting her grammar while missing her screams. If this didn't work, nothing would. She clicked submit. 11:47 p.m. The file uploaded. Patricia was asleep down the hall. This was the only window, the only moment when Autumn could risk attaching the 3 files that proved everything she'd written was true. Screenshot of a bank statement showing $197,000 missing from her trust fund. Photo of her daily schedule, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m., 14 hours of academic work, meals measured to exactly 1,080 calories, image of her bedroom door, exterior view, padlock clearly visible. Then she waited. Friday morning, 9:23 a.m., McKinney, Texas. Rachel. Raven Martinez sat at her home office, a spare bedroom filled with plants and motivational posters about learning, drinking coffee, and opening student assignments for the week. She'd been an online tutor for Tutor Connect for 2 years now, ever since burning out from 8 years of teaching high school English. Before that, she'd grown up in foster care, ages 10 through 18, where she'd experienced her own version of educational neglect in a placement where nobody checked if she actually attended school. That background made her different from other tutors, made her attuned to things others missed, made her notice patterns. She'd been tutoring Autumn Hoffman for 8 weeks now. Taken over after the previous tutor left. From day 1, something felt wrong. Autumn's writing was extraordinary. College-level analysis, sophisticated vocabulary, perfect citations. But every single essay was about captivity. Freedom, imprisonment, escape. The sessions were text only, no video, no audio. Guardian preference, the platform said. Autumn typed responses with long pauses, like she was checking over her shoulder or being interrupted. Academic work was flawless, but devoid of personality, like a robot producing content. Something wasn't right. Raven couldn't articulate it, until she opened Autumn's latest assignment. Essay title: When the Door is Locked, Freedom and Captivity in American Literature. Raven started reading, coffee going cold beside her. The opening paragraph was perfect. Comparing Frederick Douglass and Louisa May Alcott's texts, discussing how captivity takes many forms. Some obvious, iron shackles, literal slavery. Others hiding behind closed doors in respectable homes. By the 3rd paragraph, Raven was sitting up straighter. By the 7th paragraph, she wasn't breathing. By the final paragraph, she was dialing her husband with shaking hands. Because Autumn had abandoned all pretense, stopped hiding, written the truth in plain language. In conclusion, I understand that Douglas escaped slavery and Alcott's characters found freedom through family and choice. But I'm not writing about them anymore. I'm writing about me. My name is Autumn Riley Hoffman. I am 15 years old. I live at 4219 Meadowbrook Lane, McKinney, Texas. My aunt, Dr. Patricia Hoffman, is my legal guardian. She presents herself as a loving educator, but she locks my bedroom door at night. She feeds me 1,080 calories per day. She took $197,000 from my trust fund. She makes me work without payment. She hurts me. Raven's hand covered her mouth. I have tried to tell 7 people, and no one believed me. I have coded messages in every assignment I've submitted for 7 months, and no one saw them. This is my last attempt. If you're reading this, Ms. Martinez, I'm begging you. I saved screenshots. I have evidence. But I can't get it out myself. And then the line that broke Raven completely. Please don't forward this to my guardian. Please don't tell me to discuss this with family. She is family. She is the problem. Please help me before I disappear completely. Raven clicked on the attachments. Bank statement. Trust fund. Started at $340,000 in July 2022. Current balance, $143,000. Withdrawals in amounts under $10,000 each month for 31 months. Schedule posted on wall. Every hour accounted for. 6 a.m. wake. 6:15 bathroom. 15 minutes only. 6:30 breakfast. 380 calories. 7 hours of academic work without breaks. Lunch, 290 calories. More work. Dinner, 410 calories. Free time, from 6:30 to 9:00 p.m. Reading only, approved books. 9:00 p.m. Bed. Bedroom door. Exterior. Metal padlock securing it shut. What Raven didn't know yet, what she was about to discover when she started going back through 7 months of assignments, was that Autumn had been hiding messages in every single piece of work she'd submitted since March. The creative writing assignment about My Ideal Day, where Autumn wrote about eating meals that weren't measured, walking outside without permission, talking to people face to face instead of through monitored screens, sleeping in a bed without locks on the outside of the room. The tutor had given it a B and told her to incorporate more optimistic themes. The persuasive essay arguing for mandatory testing in homeschool environments, where Autumn wrote that testing creates paper trails and forces interaction with outside authorities because those tests might be the only time someone sees us. The tutor had marked her down for unclear pronoun usage. The research paper on child labor practices, where Autumn documented how homeschooled children could be forced into unpaid labor 40-plus hours weekly under the guise of educational philosophy, isolated from peers, denied meals for substandard performance, all legal if framed correctly. The tutor had praised her research, but told her to maintain scholarly distance from emotionally charged topics. 7 months, 211 days. Not one person had seen what Autumn was really saying. Until now. Raven's hands shook as she dialed. Her husband answered on the second ring. Miguel, I need you to read something. Miguel Reaper Martinez was 39 years old, had been riding with the North Texas Hells Angels chapter for 11 years, and was currently at the clubhouse working on his bike when his phone rang. When Raven's voice came through, tight, scared, urgent, He straightened immediately. "What's wrong?" "One of my students, 15-year-old girl. She just submitted an essay and—" Raven's voice cracked. "Miguel, she's been trapped. For years. Her guardian is exploiting her, taking her money, starving her, locking her in her room. She's been trying to tell people for 7 months through her homework and nobody listened." Miguel was already moving toward his truck. "Send me everything. Where is she?" "McKinney, residential area. But Miguel, her guardian is Dr. Patricia Hoffman, that homeschool advocate, the one who wrote that book about parental rights. She's prominent, respected, connected. I don't care if she's the governor." Miguel's voice was flat, cold, final. "Send me the address and everything your student wrote. I'm calling Stone. This is club business now." The line went dead. Raven sat there for 3 seconds. Then she moved into action. Screenshot the essay. Saved to 5 different locations. Cloud drive, external hard drive, email to herself, email to Miguel, email to Stone. Go back through Autumn's previous assignments. 7 months of submissions. Start reading with new eyes. Document the pattern, the coded messages, the systematic pleas that had been dismissed as creative exaggeration. Research Texas homeschool law. Understand the legal terrain. Contact her former colleague who worked with Child Protective Services. Get guidance. Within 4 hours, Raven had built a case file. Within 8 hours, that case file would be in front of 310 Hell's Angels at an emergency church meeting. But first, Raven had to respond to Autumn through the Tutor Connect platform. Had to do it carefully because she knew Patricia monitored everything. She typed, "Autumn, this is an excellent essay. Your analysis is sophisticated and your writing is powerful. I received your submission and all attachments. I have graded this assignment, A+, and saved it in my files per standard protocol. I will be in touch via platform messaging about next week's assignment. Thank you for your hard work." Generic teacher feedback. Nothing suspicious. But then Raven added one line, a line only Autumn would understand. "P.S. Sometimes the most important literature isn't what we read, but what we write. Your voice matters. Someone is listening." She hit send. Then she called Miguel back. "How fast can you get the club together?" "Stone's already making calls. Every brother within 100 miles. Tonight, 7 p.m. "Miguel, there might be more. Autumn's guardian runs a consulting business, Hoffman Academy. She has 143 client families across Texas. If Patricia's exploiting Autumn to generate curriculum content, what's happening to those other families?" Miguel was quiet for 3 seconds. "Then this isn't just about one kid. This is about a network." "Exactly. 7 o'clock. Be ready to present everything." The call ended. Raven looked at her screen, at Autumn's essay, at the attachments showing a suburban house hiding a prison, at 7 months of messages that screamed for help while adults corrected grammar and praised analytical skills. She thought about being 10 years old in a foster placement where nobody checked if she went to school. About nearly not graduating because nobody was ensuring she attended. About becoming a teacher specifically to watch for kids who fell through cracks. About recognizing patterns others missed because she'd lived them. "Hold on, Autumn," Raven whispered to the screen. "Help is coming. Real help. The kind that doesn't walk away." What Raven didn't know yet was that in 12 hours, the woman she'd spent 8 weeks tutoring would finally meet her in person. That 310 motorcycles would line a suburban street in perfect formation. That a respected educator with a doctorate would be handcuffed in her own driveway while her neighbors watched. That Autumn Hoffman's nightmare, hidden behind the facade of classical Christian homeschooling, was about to end. But first, there was a phone call to make. Friday, 6:47 p.m. Hell's Angels, North Texas. Chapter Clubhouse. The clubhouse sat in an industrial area on the east side of McKinney. A converted warehouse with 60 parking spaces and a meeting hall that could hold 200. By 6:47 p.m., every space was full. Motorcycles lined the street for 3 blocks. Word had spread fast. Stone had made 3 calls. Those 3 became 30. 30 became 90. Brothers were rolling in from 3 chapters: North Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana. 310 men total. The largest multi-state mobilization the South Central region had seen in 11 years. They gathered in the main hall. Leather vests bearing the same insignia, skull patches, chrome glinting under fluorescent lights. From the outside, they looked exactly like what most people feared: dangerous men who lived outside society's rules. What they actually were was something different. A brotherhood bound by code, by the principle that some things are worth fighting for, and protecting the vulnerable was at the top of that list. Marcus Stone Rivera stood at the front of the room. 58 years old, 6'3", former Marine Corps JAG officer, military lawyer, who'd spent 20 years navigating legal systems before joining the club. Now president of the North Texas chapter, the second largest in the state. He had a personal reason for being here. His sister had been homeschool abused in the 1980s. Nobody had helped her. Nobody had even noticed. By the time anyone figured out what was happening, she'd lost years of education, years of childhood, years of safety. Stone had spent 30 years wishing someone had paid attention. Tonight, someone finally had. Raven Martinez stood beside him, invited to speak, rare for a non-member. She'd brought her laptop, connected it to the projector. Autumn's essay filled the screen. "Before I start," Raven said, voice steady despite shaking hands, "I need you to understand something. I've been tutoring for 2 years. I've worked with maybe 40 students. I'm good at recognizing when a kid is struggling. But I missed this for 8 weeks. 8 weeks of sessions where this girl was typing responses from a room with a padlock on the door, and I didn't see it." She clicked to the next slide. Autumn's final paragraph. Until she stopped hiding. Until she wrote this. The room read in silence. "My name is Autumn Riley Hoffman. I am 15 years old. I live at 4219 Meadowbrook Lane, McKinney, Texas. My aunt, Dr. Patricia Hoffman, is my legal guardian. She locks my bedroom door at night. She feeds me 1,080 calories per day. She took $197,000 from my trust fund. She makes me work without payment. She hurts me. I have tried to tell 7 people and no one believed me. I have coded messages in every assignment I've submitted for 7 months, and no one saw them. This is my last attempt. Please, help me, before I disappear completely." Raven let the words sit for 5 seconds. Then she clicked to the attachments. Bank statement, schedule, bedroom door with padlock. Autumn's parents died 31 months ago. Car accident. Drunk driver on I-75. She was 12. Her Aunt Patricia, maternal aunt, obtained guardianship. Presented herself as a loving educator willing to homeschool her grieving niece. Nobody questioned it. Another click. Patricia Hoffman's professional profile appeared. Dr. Patricia Ann Hoffman, 43 years old, educational consultant and curriculum developer, board member of the Texas Homeschool Coalition, speaker at national conventions, published author. Her book is called The Guardian Scholar, Protecting Your Child's Education from Secular Interference. Sold 34,000 copies. She consults for 143 homeschool families across Texas at $847 per family per year. That's $121,000 in annual revenue. Raven's jaw tightened. Here's what nobody knew. Autumn writes the curriculum. 30 to 40 hours a month producing lesson plans, worksheets, teaching guides. Another 10 to 15 hours editing Patricia's manuscripts. 5 to 10 hours creating social media content. Patricia files Autumn's work under folders labeled Student Labor, Free Content Pipeline. Autumn hasn't been paid a single dollar. That's child labor exploitation disguised as education. Miguel spoke from the front row. And the trust fund? Patricia was appointed trustee when she got guardianship. Original balance, $340,000 from Autumn's parents' life insurance. Current balance, $143,000. Patricia's been withdrawing amounts under $10,000 each month for 31 months to avoid reporting requirements. $197,000 embezzled total. It paid for home renovations, a Lexus, country club membership, spa treatments, all categorized as guardian expenses for minors' care. Stone's voice cut through the room. And the system? CPS? School district? Anyone? Raven shook her head. Texas homeschool law has no oversight, no registration required, no mandatory testing, no home visits. Parents and guardians have near absolute authority under parental rights doctrine. Patricia operates with zero external accountability. She's moved Autumn to 3 different online tutoring platforms in 18 months because tutors kept noticing patterns. Each time, Patricia explained it as finding better academic fit. Each time, the concerning observations got dismissed when Patricia provided documentation about Autumn's grief-related behavioral problems. She clicked to the next slide. Autumn's previous essays appeared. I went back through 7 months of assignments tonight. Every single one has coded messages. Look at this one from March. Creative writing assignment. Autumn wrote about her ideal day. Waking up without someone checking if she's still there. Eating food that isn't measured. Walking outside without permission. Talking to people face to face instead of through monitored screens. The tutor gave her a B and told her to incorporate more optimistic themes. Another slide. May. Persuasive essay about standardized testing. Autumn wrote that testing forces interaction with outside authorities because, quote, those tests might be the only time someone sees us. The tutor marked her down for unclear pronoun usage. Another slide. July. Research paper on child labor. Autumn documented how homeschooled children can be isolated, denied meals, forced into unpaid labor, all legal if framed as educational philosophy. The tutor praised her research but told her to maintain scholarly distance from emotionally charged topics. Raven's voice cracked. She's been screaming for 211 days, in the only language she had access to, academic writing, and every adult who read her work corrected her grammar, praised her citations, and completely missed that she was begging for help. The room was silent. Until tonight, Raven finished, when she finally stopped coding, stopped hiding, and wrote her name, her address, and the truth in plain words. Stone looked at Miguel. Miguel nodded once. Stone turned back to the room. All right, here's the situation. One abused child in immediate danger. Potentially 143 families receiving curriculum created through exploitation. A perpetrator with political connections, professional credentials, and a public platform. And a legal framework designed to prevent exactly the kind of oversight that would have stopped this. He paused. Let the weight settle. We're not vigilantes. We're evidence gatherers. We're going to build a case so detailed that CPS can't ignore it and prosecutors can't dismiss it. We have 72 hours before Patricia Hoffman figures out something's wrong. Here's how we do it. Stone pointed to a man in the front row. Gerald Bones Thompson, 63 years old. Retired homicide detective from Portland who'd relocated to Texas 5 years ago. 28 years on the force. Knew how to make cases stick. Bones, you're coordinating with law enforcement. Find someone at McKinney PD who gives a damn. Build the criminal case. Embezzlement, child labor, abuse of a minor. Make it prosecutable. Bones nodded, pulled out his phone, started making calls. Wire. Jason Martinez, Miguel's younger brother, 31 years old, computer forensics specialist, stood up. Tutor Connect keeps homework files for 12 months, then auto-deletes. Autumn's oldest messages from March will be deleted in 5 months. Pull everything from their servers before it disappears. Every essay, every message. Build a digital timeline showing the pattern. On it. Doc. Samuel Washington, 56, former Army combat medic, current EMT, 19 years of field experience. When we extract Autumn, she'll need immediate medical examination. Coordinate with hospitals. Document evidence of malnutrition, abuse of a minor. Get medical records showing Patricia canceled appointments. Build the health neglect case. Understood. Professor. David Chen, 47. Former high school English teacher. Left after 23 years because he got burned out watching the system fail kids. You're going to analyze every essay Autumn wrote, document the coded messages, show the pattern, prove this wasn't creative writing, it was systematic documentation of ongoing criminal activity. Make it impossible for anyone to claim she was just processing grief. Professor nodded. I'll have a full report by tomorrow night. Stone looked at the room. 310 men, all waiting. We need surveillance teams on Patricia Hoffman's house. Document her movements. Verify Autumn hasn't left the property. Photograph any visitors. Build a timeline. We need witness canvassing. Neighbors who might have seen something. Previous tutors who raised concerns. Medical professionals Patricia blocked from seeing Autumn. Get statements. Get them on record. We need financial forensics. Every withdrawal from that trust fund. Where the money went. How Patricia spent it. Build the embezzlement case beyond any doubt. And we need an extraction plan. Legal, clean, coordinated with authorities. Patricia thinks she's bringing Autumn to a student writing showcase next Saturday. What she's actually doing is delivering her into protective custody in a parking lot full of police and social workers. He paused, looked around the room one more time. All in favor of full club protection for Autumn Riley Hoffman? The room went quiet. Not because people were uncertain. Because this was the moment when noise became unnecessary. For 3 seconds, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of traffic outside. Then every single hand went up. Not one dissent, not one hesitation. 310 men voting unanimously to protect a child they'd never met. Because that's what Brotherhood meant. Not the leather or the patches or the motorcycles. The willingness to stand between the vulnerable and those who'd harm them. Even when, especially when, the person causing harm wore a doctorate and spoke at national conferences. Stone nodded once. Good. Teams, you've got your assignments. Report back here tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Move out. The room erupted into organized motion, brothers pulling out phones, forming teams, making plans. But there was no yelling, no aggressive posturing, just 310 men who'd just committed to dismantling a criminal operation disguised as Christian education. Raven stood at the front, watching leather-clad men transform into investigators. She felt Miguel's hand on her shoulder. "You did good," he said quietly, seeing what nobody else saw. "I almost didn't. If she hadn't stopped hiding, if she hadn't written that final paragraph, I might have missed it too." "But you didn't. You paid attention. That's the difference." Raven looked at the screen, at Autumn's words still projected on the wall. "I have tried to tell 7 people, and no one believed me. This is my last attempt. Please." "She's going to be okay now," Miguel said. "We're going to make sure of it." What neither of them knew yet, what they were about to discover when Wire started pulling digital evidence, was that Autumn Hoffman had been even more systematic than they realized. Hidden in obscure folders on her computer were screenshots of every trust withdrawal, photos of Patricia's luxury purchases, copies of curriculum content with timestamps proving Autumn authored it, a list documenting all 7 attempts to get help, including names, dates, and exact responses. For 31 months, while Patricia thought she was controlling every aspect of Autumn's life, Autumn had been building evidence, documenting, recording, preparing for the day when someone finally listened. That day had come. And in 72 hours, Patricia Hoffman's carefully constructed facade, her doctorate, her book deals, her speaking engagements, her reputation as a champion of parental rights, was going to collapse under the weight of one teenager's meticulous documentation. But first, there was a message to send. Saturday morning, 9:17 a.m. Raven sent the message through Tutor Connect. "Autumn, your essay was exceptional. I've shared it with several educational professionals who were very impressed. We're organizing a small student showcase next weekend, where exceptional writers can present their work to a wider audience. I'd like to nominate your essay. This would involve an in-person meeting at our facility. I'll coordinate details with your guardian. Looking forward to featuring your writing. You deserve to be seen and heard." Ms. Martinez. It sounded normal. Generic teacher praise, an opportunity. But buried in those words was a message Autumn would understand. "We're coming to get you. Hold on 6 more days." Patricia Hoffman read the message at 10:23 a.m. while eating her breakfast. Greek yogurt with granola, 340 calories. Measured precisely because she practiced what she preached about discipline and structure. She smiled. An in-person showcase. Educational professionals. A chance to demonstrate Autumn's success under her guardianship. Proof that her methods worked. Validation of her approach. She typed her response. "Ms. Martinez, how wonderful. Autumn would be delighted to participate. She rarely gets to interact with others due to her social anxiety, so this will be great exposure therapy. Please send details about the showcase. We're available next Saturday afternoon." Dr. Hoffman. Patricia didn't know she'd just agreed to bring Autumn to a parking lot where Child Protective Services, McKinney Police Department, and 310 Hells Angels would be waiting. She didn't know that in the 72 hours between that message and Saturday afternoon, her entire life was about to be investigated by men who knew exactly how to build cases that couldn't be dismissed. She had no idea that the girl locked in the bedroom upstairs, the girl she thought was completely isolated and controlled, had spent 31 months building evidence against her. Patricia finished her breakfast, rinsed the bowl, put it in the dishwasher. Everything measured, everything controlled, everything perfect. just like always. Saturday through Monday. The investigation. You might be thinking that 310 Hell's Angels descending on a case means chaos, confrontations, threats, intimidation. That's not how Brotherhood works. Not real Brotherhood. Not the kind built on protecting people rather than proving power. What happened over those 72 hours wasn't dramatic. It was methodical, precise, almost boring in its attention to procedure and documentation, because Stone knew something that Patricia Hoffman didn't understand. The most dangerous weapon against someone who exploits legal loopholes isn't violence. It's better paperwork. Team 1. Financial Forensics. Wire and Bones spent Saturday afternoon with a financial analyst from Miguel's bank, someone who owed the club a favor from years back when they'd helped recover his stolen motorcycle. The trust document gave Patricia broad discretion as trustee. But discretion has limits. And those limits are defined by something called fiduciary duty, the legal obligation to act in the beneficiary's best interest, not the trustee's. Wire pulled every bank record, every withdrawal, every transaction, $83,000 to home renovations. But Autumn lived in a 10x12 converted bedroom with a padlock. The renovation? Patricia's master suite addition with a spa bathroom, $47,000 for a Lexus RX 350, titled in Patricia's name. Autumn had no driver's license, no car, no transportation, $28,000 in business expenses, convention travel, designer clothes for speaking engagements, none benefiting Autumn, $19,000 country club membership. Patricia played golf twice weekly. Autumn wasn't allowed outside. Every single withdrawal violated fiduciary duty. Every purchase demonstrated self-dealing, using trust assets for personal benefit while claiming they were for the minor's care. Wire built a spreadsheet, color-coded, timeline on one axis, expenditures on the other, legitimate expenses in green, questionable in yellow, clear violations in red. The spreadsheet was 94% red. "This isn't embezzlement," the financial analyst said, staring at the screen. "This is wholesale looting." Bones made notes, took photos, built the prosecutable case. Team 2. Witness canvassing. Professor and 3 other brothers spent Saturday and Sunday knocking on doors within 3 blocks of 4219 Meadowbrook Lane. McKinney was an upscale suburb, HOA maintained, family-oriented, the kind of place where people knew their neighbors' names and noticed when something felt wrong. The problem was, nobody had acted on what they noticed. Witness Testimony 1. Dr. Sheila Patel. Dr. Patel was 51 years old, pediatrician, had seen Autumn exactly once, 23 months ago, for what Patricia described as a routine checkup before starting homeschool. Professor found her at her practice on Sunday afternoon. She agreed to talk during her lunch break. "I remember Autumn," Dr. Patel said, pulling up the file on her computer. 12 years old at the time, recent parental loss. Guardian brought her in for school physical. "What did you observe?" "Physically, she appeared healthy at that visit, height and weight within normal ranges, but something about the interaction concerned me." The Guardian, Dr. Hoffman, answered every question before Autumn could speak. Corrected Autumn's responses. Maintained constant physical contact, hand on shoulder, touching her arm, controlling body language. Dr. Patel scrolled through notes. "I documented that Autumn seemed withdrawn and anxious. I noted that the Guardian dominated the interaction. I recommended follow-up in 6 months to monitor adjustment to homeschooling. Did they return? No. I called twice, left messages. Patricia said Autumn was thriving and didn't need unnecessary medical visits. I filed a concern with my practice manager about a guardian potentially blocking appropriate care. Professor's pen stopped. What happened with that concern? Dr. Patel's jaw tightened. My manager said I was overreaching, that homeschool families often have different approaches to health care, that Dr. Hoffman was a respected educator, and I needed to be careful about making accusations that could be seen as bias against parental rights. The concern was noted in internal files, but never escalated. 23 months ago. If someone had investigated, Dr. Patel interrupted, Autumn might have had 2 years of safety instead of 2 years of exploitation. I've been carrying that for 23 months. Wondering if I should have pushed harder, called CPS myself, done something more than file an internal complaint that got dismissed. She looked at Professor directly. Will you need my testimony in court? Yes, ma'am. Good. I'll clear my schedule. Witness testimony 2. Kevin Morrison. Kevin Morrison lived 3 houses down from Patricia. 47 years old. IT consultant. Worked from home. Office window faced the street. Professor found him in his driveway on Sunday evening, washing his car. I've seen Dr. Hoffman leaving and returning multiple times daily, Kevin said when Professor explained why he was there. Grocery store, gym, hair salon, church, country club, very active schedule. And Autumn? Kevin's hands stilled on the car. I've never seen her. Not once in, I don't know how long. 2 years? Longer? The windows? Always covered. Sheer curtains. You can see light on, but never movement inside. I thought maybe the girl was just very introverted, or had social anxiety like Dr. Hoffman mentioned once when I asked about her. You asked? About 8 months ago. I said I'd noticed I never saw the girl outside. Dr. Hoffman smiled and said Autumn preferred indoor activities, that she was working through grief-related social challenges, that forcing her into public situations would be counterproductive. It sounded reasonable, therapeutic, professional. Kevin put down the sponge, looked at Professor. But I knew something felt wrong. You know how you just, no? I convinced myself I was being paranoid, that if something was actually wrong, surely someone would have noticed. A doctor, a caseworker, someone qualified, not just a neighbor who works in IT. His voice dropped. I should have called anyway. You're calling now, Professor said, by talking to me, by agreeing to testify. That doesn't undo 2 years of looking away. No, but it helps end it. That counts for something. Witness testimony 3. Linda Vasquez. Linda Vasquez was 38, former Tutor Connect tutor, had taught Autumn from March through June, 4 months before leaving the platform for an unrelated job opportunity. Wire tracked her down through employment records. She lived in Dallas, about 45 minutes from McKinney. She met Bones and Professor at a coffee shop Monday morning. Brought a folder. I've been carrying this for 5 months, she said, sliding the folder across the table. Copies of Autumn's essays from when I tutored her. I kept them because something felt wrong, but I couldn't articulate what. After I left Tutor Connect, I kept thinking about her, wondering if I should have done more. Bones opened the folder. 4 essays, all with similar themes. Captivity, freedom, systems failing, people not seeing. Did you raise concerns with Tutor Connect? Twice. I flagged 2 assignments as potentially concerning. The platform supervisor contacted Dr. Hoffman both times. Both times Dr. Hoffman provided explanations about Autumn processing grief through creative writing. Said her therapist had encouraged it as healthy emotional outlet. Supervisor told me to continue sessions and not read too much into teenage creative dramatics. Linda's hands wrapped around her coffee cup. But they weren't dramatics. They were documentation. And I missed it. I corrected her grammar. I praised her analytical skills. I completely failed to see that she was begging for help. You see it now, Professor said. You kept copies. You showed up today. That matters. Does it? Or is it just me trying to feel better about failing a child for 4 months? Bones looked at her directly. Ms. Vasquez, guilt is appropriate. It means you have a conscience. But guilt without action is just self-indulgence. You're here. You're testifying. That's action. That ends the failure. Linda nodded slowly. Whatever you need. Deposition, court testimony, written statement. I'll do it. She pulled out her phone, showed them text messages she'd sent herself months ago, notes about concerning content in Autumn's work, documentation of her own failed attempts to escalate. I'm an English teacher, Linda said quietly. We're trained to see subtext, to read between lines, to understand that fiction often contains truth. And I missed the most obvious subtext I've ever encountered. A child literally writing "help me" in every assignment. She looked at the essays in the folder. I'm done missing it. Team 3. The second victim. On Monday afternoon, Wire was deep in Patricia's digital files, computer forensics, pulling deleted documents, searching email archives, when he found the folder. It was labeled Life Insurance Research, 2021. Inside were comparison documents. 5 different insurance companies. Policy amounts ranging from $150,000 to $300,000. Target insured, minor female dependent, age 12 to 15, no pre-existing conditions. But that wasn't the damning part. The damning part was the subfolder titled Reference, Previous Policy Holder. Wire clicked it open. Insurance policy, issued by Guardian Life. Policyholder, Dr. Patricia Ann Hoffman. Insured party, Amanda Marie Hoffman. Relationship, niece. Coverage amount, $180,000. Date of issue, October 2018. Date of death, March 2020. Cause of death listed on attached certificate. Complications from pneumonia. Beneficiary payout, $180,000. Processed April 2020. Wire's hands stopped moving. He read the dates again. Patricia had insured her previous niece, another niece, for $180,000. That niece had died 18 months later. Patricia collected the full payout. He pulled up the death certificate image. Amanda Marie Hoffman. Age at death, 14. Cause, pneumonia complications. Signed by a Dr. Robert Chen at McKinney General Hospital. Wire kept digging. Found Amanda's medical records. Or rather, the lack of them. No pediatrician visits in the year before death. No hospital admissions until the final one. No documentation of chronic illness that would make pneumonia fatal in a 14-year-old. He found one more document. An internal hospital note from the attending physician. Patient presented with severe pneumonia and malnutrition. Guardian reported patient had been fighting illness for several weeks, but this was first medical visit. Malnutrition suggested prolonged nutritional deficiency. Attempted treatment, but patient's compromised immune system could not fight infection. Suspicious circumstances noted, but Guardian is medical professional, PhD in education, presented as qualified to make health decisions. Patient expired, Zo3/17/2020. Recommend review. Recommend review. Wire searched for follow-up. Found nothing. The review had never happened. He picked up his phone. Called Bones. We've got a pattern. Patricia did this before. Different niece. 2018 to 2020. Insured for $180,000. Deceased at 14 from pneumonia complicated by malnutrition. Patricia collected the payout. And nobody investigated because she's a medical professional with a doctorate. Bones was silent for 5 seconds. Can you prove the malnutrition was intentional? Hospital notes describe severe nutritional deficiency and no prior medical visits despite guardian claims of fighting illness for weeks. That's medical neglect at minimum. Combined with life insurance and current pattern with Autumn, that's clear motive and method. Send me everything. We need to get Amanda's case reopened. If we can prove Patricia caused one niece's death and was in process of setting up another, that establishes pattern. Makes the charges against her exponentially more serious. Wire sent the files. Sat back. Stared at Amanda Hoffman's death certificate. Patricia had done this before. Taken in a vulnerable child. Insured them. Neglected them to death. Collected the payout. And gotten away with it completely. She'd been preparing to do it again with Autumn. The only difference was that Autumn had written her SOS in homework assignments, and someone had finally read them. Monday evening. The trap is set. At 6:47 p.m. Monday, Raven sent the follow-up message to Patricia. Dr. Hoffman, the student showcase is confirmed for Saturday, October 26th, 2:00 p.m. at the McKinney Community Education Center, 1847 Industrial Parkway. Autumn should bring a copy of her essay to read a brief excerpt, 2-3 minutes. Dress is business casual. We're expecting 15 to 20 attendees, including educators and writing professionals. Please confirm your attendance. Ms. Martinez. The address was real. The McKinney Community Education Center existed. What Patricia didn't know was that it shared a parking lot with the Hells Angels clubhouse. And the showcase was scheduled in a meeting room rented by the club for exactly this purpose. Patricia responded within 10 minutes. Confirmed. Autumn and I will be there at 1:45 p.m. to allow time for her to settle her nerves. Thank you for this opportunity to showcase her progress, Dr. Hoffman. Stone read the confirmation. Nodded once. Looked at Bones. We've got 6 days. CPS needs to be briefed. McKinney PD needs to be coordinated. We need emergency custody orders prepared. We need medical personnel on standby. And we need to make absolutely certain that when Patricia walks into that parking lot, every single piece of evidence is so airtight that her lawyers can't create reasonable doubt. Bones pulled up his contact list. He'd spent Monday building relationships with the right people. Detective Sarah Vance at McKinney PD, 20 years on the force, specialized in financial crimes, had a daughter Autumn's age. Jennifer Torres at Child Protective Services, 16 years as a caseworker, openly frustrated with system failures, wanted to do this job right for once. Assistant District Attorney Marcus Webb, former public defender who'd switched sides specifically to prosecute people who exploited children. They're all on board, Bones said. Detective Vance reviewed the financial evidence, said it's the clearest case of embezzlement and abuse of a minor she's seen in a decade. Torres is preparing emergency custody paperwork. Webb is building charging documents. Embezzlement, child labor exploitation, abuse of a minor, medical neglect, fraud. He's also requesting Amanda Hoffman's case be reopened for investigation into cause of death. What about the judge? Judge Maria Costello, family court. 40 years on the bench. She's seen everything. Torres says Costello has been waiting for a case like this, one where the system failed repeatedly, and someone finally built evidence strong enough to overcome the parental rights defense. She'll sign the emergency custody order the moment we walk in with this documentation. Stone looked around the room. Brothers who'd spent 72 hours building a case. Not with fists or intimidation, with spreadsheets and witness statements and medical records and digital forensics. Saturday at 1:45 p.m., Patricia Hoffman brings Autumn to what she thinks is a student showcase. What she'll actually encounter is Detective Vance, 2 uniformed officers, Jennifer Torres with emergency custody order, and a medical team ready to document evidence of abuse. We'll be present, visible. 310 motorcycles in formation. Not to threaten, to witness, to make sure everyone knows this child has protection. He paused. And if Patricia tries to run, tries to leave with Autumn before authorities can intervene, we have legal standing to perform citizen's arrest for suspected abuse of a minor. Every brother here is trained in non-violent restraint. We detain, we call police, we protect the victim. Clear? 310 voices. Clear. Friday, October 25th. The day before. Patricia spent Friday preparing Autumn for the showcase. Bought her a new outfit. Modest dress, appropriate for young Christian homeschool student, navy blue with white collar. Reminded Autumn to smile, make eye contact, speak clearly when reading her essay excerpt. Reminded her what would happen if she embarrassed Patricia in front of educational professionals. Reminded her that everything she had, food, shelter, education, came from Patricia's sacrifice. Reminded her to be grateful. Autumn nodded. Said, "Yes, ma'am." Practiced her grateful face in the mirror. And late Friday night, when Patricia was asleep and the house was silent, Autumn pulled out her hidden composition notebook. The physical one, not the digital files, the one she kept under her mattress with handwritten drafts of every essay she'd ever submitted. She turned to a blank page. Wrote one sentence. Day 217. Tomorrow, I find out if anyone is really coming or if this is just another door closing. Then she closed the notebook, hid it back under the mattress, and waited for Saturday to arrive. What Autumn didn't know, what she couldn't know because she was locked in that room with no contact with the outside world, was that while she was writing that sentence, 310 men were conducting final equipment checks on their motorcycles. Detective Vance was reviewing arrest procedures with her team. Jennifer Torres was triple-checking emergency custody paperwork. Dr. Samuel Washington was preparing medical examination supplies. And Raven Martinez was writing a platform message she'd send at exactly 6:00 a.m. Saturday morning. Autumn, today is the day your voice gets heard. Really heard. Hold on just a little longer. We're coming for you. You're about to be safe. I promise. Ms. Martinez. A message Autumn would read at 6:47 a.m. while eating her measured breakfast, 380 calories exactly, before Patricia took her phone away for the drive to the showcase. A message that would give Autumn just enough hope to walk out that door, just enough courage to get in Patricia's car, just enough strength to hold on for one more hour. Because in 1 hour and 13 minutes, when Patricia pulled into the parking lot at 1:45 p.m., expecting educational professionals and writing enthusiasts, she was going to see something very different. She was going to see justice. And justice, it turns out, rides a Harley-Davidson. Saturday, October 26th, 1:37 p.m. The parking lot of the McKinney Community Education Center looked different than Patricia expected when she turned onto Industrial Parkway. For one thing, It was full of motorcycles. 310 of them, parked in perfect formation. Rows so precise they looked military. Chrome gleaming in October sunlight. Skull patches visible on black leather vests. Hell's Angels. Dozens of them. Hundreds of them. Standing in formation beside their bikes. Silent. Watching. Patricia's hands tightened on the steering wheel of her Lexus, the one purchased with Autumn's trust money. What is this? Autumn, sitting in the passenger seat, wearing the new navy dress, stared out the window. Her heart was hammering so hard, she thought Patricia must be able to hear it. They were here. The bikers were here. Raven hadn't lied. Help had actually come. There must be some event, Patricia said, voice tight. She pulled into a parking space near the building entrance, turned off the engine. Stay close to me. Don't talk to anyone. If someone asks you anything, you smile and let me answer. Understood? Yes, ma'am. They got out of the car. Patricia's hand immediately gripped Autumn's upper arm. Proprietary. Controlling. They walked toward the building entrance, past rows of motorcycles, past dozens of silent men who watched every step. And then, Detective Sarah Vance stepped out of the building. 2 uniformed officers flanked her. Jennifer Torres stood to her left, holding a folder. Dr. Washington stood to her right, medical bag in hand. Raven Martinez stood beside them. And when Autumn saw her, saw the woman she'd been typing messages to for 8 weeks, the woman who'd finally seen what nobody else had, tears started running down her face. Detective Vance held up her badge. "Dr. Patricia Hoffman?" Patricia stopped. "Yes? Is there a problem?" "I'm Detective Vance, McKinney Police Department. This is Jennifer Torres, Child Protective Services. We have an emergency custody order for Autumn Riley Hoffman." She held up the document. "You're also under arrest for embezzlement, abuse of a minor, child labor exploitation, and fraud. You have the right to remain silent." Patricia's mask cracked. "This is a mistake. I'm her guardian. I'm her legal guardian. I have documentation." "We've seen your documentation," Vance said coldly. "We've also seen bank records showing you stole $197,000 from a minor's trust fund. Hospital records showing you blocked medical care. Digital evidence of child labor exploitation. And witness testimony from 3 tutors, a pediatrician, and a neighbor. Turn around. Hands behind your back." "Where is Autumn?" Patricia demanded, looking around frantically. "I'm her guardian. I have rights." Autumn stepped away from her, moved toward Raven. Raven's arms immediately wrapped around her, gentle, protective, safe. "You don't have rights anymore," Detective Vance said. "You have charges. Turn around." One of the uniformed officers moved forward. Patricia's hands were pulled behind her back. Handcuffs clicked into place. And as Patricia stood there, handcuffed in the parking lot of a building she'd thought was hosting a student showcase, in front of a teenager she'd thought was completely controlled, she finally looked at the motorcycles. At the 310 men who'd come to bear witness. At the Hell's Angels, who'd done what 3 tutors, a pediatrician, a neighbor, and multiple system failures hadn't. Believed a child who was screaming for help. Stone stood at the front of the formation. Didn't smile. Didn't gloat. Just stared at Patricia Hoffman until she understood. Autumn was protected now. Untouchable. If Patricia somehow made bail, if she tried anything, if she even thought about retribution, 310 men would be watching. The police car pulled up. Patricia was placed in the back seat. No longer Dr. Hoffman, respected educator. just a woman in handcuffs facing multiple felony charges. As the car pulled away, Raven kept her arms around Autumn. "You're safe now," she whispered. "Really safe. Finally safe." Autumn was sobbing. 7 months of holding everything inside. 7 months of coded messages. 7 months of wondering if anyone would ever see. "I wrote so many essays," she gasped. "So many messages. I thought nobody was listening." "I listened," Raven said, "and I'm so sorry it took me 8 weeks to see. But I saw. And you're safe now. I promise you're safe." Jennifer Torres approached carefully, knelt to Autumn's level. "Autumn, I'm Jennifer from Child Protective Services. I have an emergency custody order that removes you from Dr. Hoffman's guardianship. You're going to stay in a safe place while we work through the legal process. Dr. Washington is going to do a medical examination to document evidence we need for the case. And then we're going to make sure you have everything you need: food, housing, medical care, therapy, education. You're not going back to that house. Do you understand?" Autumn nodded. Couldn't speak. Just nodded. Miguel stepped forward. "My wife and I have a spare room. We've been approved as emergency foster placement. Autumn can stay with us until permanent placement is arranged. We live 15 minutes from here. Safe neighborhood. Safe people." Jennifer checked her paperwork. "Miguel and Rachel Martinez, already cleared through expedited review. Approved." She looked at Autumn. "Would you be comfortable staying with Miss Martinez and her husband? They want to help, but it's your choice." Autumn looked at Raven. At the woman who'd finally seen the messages, who'd believed when nobody else did, who'd brought 310 people to make sure she'd be safe. "Yes," Autumn whispered. "Yes, please." Justice had been served. Patricia Hoffman, in handcuffs. Emergency custody granted. Autumn removed from danger. But justice wasn't the ending. It was only the beginning. 3 days after Autumn's rescue, Detective Sarah Miller sat in the Hillsborough Police Department's conference room, surrounded by evidence that made her stomach turn. 17 banker's boxes, 463 pages of medical records, 22 witness statements, and a pattern so clear, so systematic, that it revealed not just one case of abuse, but a system that had failed for 8 years. Dr. Washington's medical report sat at the center of the table, its conclusions stark and undeniable. Multiple healing fractures, evidence of prolonged malnutrition, burn scars in patterns consistent with deliberate infliction, bruising in various stages of healing, indicating ongoing physical assault. But it was the psychological evaluation that Detective Miller kept returning to. Subject demonstrates selective mutism consistent with severe trauma, Dr. Washington had written. Subject's communication through sign language and written notes suggests cognitive function is intact, but verbal communication has been suppressed through fear conditioning. Recovery will require specialized trauma therapy and establishment of consistent safety. Sarah looked up at the photographs pinned to the evidence board. Autumn, at 9 years old, bright-eyed and smiling in her 4th grade class photo. Autumn at 12, thin and hollow-eyed, standing beside Patricia Hoffman at some charity gala where Hoffman had accepted an award for outstanding foster care service. The contrast made Sarah's chest tight. Her partner, Detective Marcus Williams, entered with 2 more boxes. "Property records came through," he said, "and you're not going to believe this." He spread documents across the table. Property deeds, insurance policies, bank statements. Patricia Hoffman purchased the house 18 months before she applied to be a foster parent. Marcus explained. Paid cash. $280,000. But here's the interesting part. She took out a life insurance policy on Autumn 6 months after placement. $500,000 policy. Autumn was the insured. Hoffman was the beneficiary. Sarah's blood went cold. She insured a foster child? It gets worse. We subpoenaed her financial records. She's done this before. 3 times before. Marcus laid out 3 more files. 3 other children. 3 life insurance policies. 3 children who were no longer in Hoffman's care. Where are these kids now? Sarah asked. Marcus's expression was grim. 2 aged out of the system. We're tracking them down for interviews. The third owl, Daniel Reyes, aged out O, caused death in a single-car accident 2 years ago. Same pattern. Evidence of abuse that was never reported. Insurance payout of $400,000 went to Hoffman as grieving foster mother who'd tried so hard to help a troubled teen. Sarah felt sick. She's been systematically abusing children and collecting insurance money when they die or age out damaged enough that they can't report what happened. And she's been getting away with it because she volunteers, donates to charities, attends church, looks perfect on paper. Marcus pulled up Hoffman's social media on his laptop. Photos of Hoffman at fundraisers. Hoffman receiving awards. Hoffman posing with local politicians. She built a public image as this selfless foster mother while privately engaging in abuse. Detective Miller stood up, her jaw set. Not anymore. Pull every case file on every child she's fostered. I want witness interviews, medical records, school reports. We're building a case that ensures she never touches another child. Marcus nodded and headed for the door, but Sarah called him back. And Marcus, get me Raven Morrison's contact information. The biker who saw the signs. I want her full statement on record. And I want every Hells Angels member who responded that day available for deposition. Their testimony about the condition they found Autumn in, the evidence they secured, the witnesses they coordinated, that's going to be crucial. Because this wasn't just about one case anymore. This was about a predator who'd hidden behind respectability for years. And Sarah Miller was going to make sure everyone saw exactly who Patricia Hoffman really was. Meanwhile, 30 miles away in Beaverton, Autumn was beginning to understand what safety actually felt like. The Martinez home was nothing like Hoffman's house. Where Hoffman's place had been cold and controlled, the Martinez home was warm and alive. Rachel Martinez hummed while she cooked. Miguel told stories about his construction projects. Their teenage son, Carlos, taught Autumn how to play his guitar. There were rules, yes, but the rules made sense. Dinner at 6. Homework before TV. Tell us if you're going outside. Not rules designed to control and isolate. Rules designed to create structure and safety. Autumn still couldn't speak. Words caught in her throat like stones, heavy and immovable. But the Martinez family didn't pressure her. Rachel had learned basic sign language. Miguel downloaded an ASL app on his phone. Carlos texted her encouragement and funny memes. And Raven visited twice a week. On the 5th day, Raven arrived with something unexpected. She walked into the Martinez living room carrying a backpack and a look of determination. "Hey kid," Raven said, settling onto the couch beside Autumn. "I brought something for you." She pulled out a leather-bound journal and a set of colored pens. "Dr. Washington said you might not be ready to talk out loud yet. And that's okay. Words are hard sometimes, but there are other ways to communicate. Other ways to tell your story." Raven opened the journal to the first page. It was blank, except for a single sentence written in Raven's handwriting. "This is Autumn's story. Nobody else gets to tell it. I learned something when I was younger. Raven said softly. I learned that when people hurt you, they try to make you believe their version of events. They try to make you think it's your fault, or it didn't happen the way you remember, or nobody will believe you anyway. She looked directly at Autumn, her dark eyes fierce and certain. But your story is yours, Autumn. What happened to you is real. What you survived is real. And nobody gets to take that away from you or rewrite it or minimize it. Autumn's hands trembled as she took the journal. Raven continued. You don't have to write anything right now if you don't want to. But when you're ready, when the words come, you write them down, all of it. Every single thing you remember. Because your story matters. And because someday, when you're ready, and that story is going to help make sure Patricia Hoffman never hurts anyone else. Autumn opened to the second page. She picked up a purple pen. And after 8 years of forced silence, after 8 years of being told her pain didn't matter, after 8 years of having no voice, she began to write. The preliminary hearing took place on a gray February morning, 2 months after Autumn's rescue. The Multnomah County Courthouse was packed. The prosecution had charged Patricia Hoffman with 15 counts, including child abuse, neglect, assault, and filing false insurance claims. The evidence was overwhelming. Medical reports, financial records, witness testimony from neighbors, teachers, and caseworkers who'd raised concerns that had been dismissed. But the moment that changed everything came when Jennifer Torres, the Child Protective Services worker, took the stand. Ms. Torres, the prosecutor began, can you tell us about your interactions with Patricia Hoffman regarding Autumn Daniels? Jennifer straightened her shoulders. She'd been dreading this. But Raven's words from that day echoed in her mind. You can make this right. I received multiple reports expressing concerns about Autumn's welfare over the course of her placement with Ms. Hoffman, Jennifer said, her voice steady. Reports from school counselors noting bruising. Reports from neighbors describing concerning behavior. Reports from medical professionals flagging injuries. And what did you do with those reports? Jennifer took a breath. I conducted follow-up visits. Ms. Hoffman was always cooperative. She had explanations for everything. Autumn was accident-prone. The bruises were from falling downstairs. The weight loss was due to a medical condition that Ms. Hoffman claimed was being treated. Did you investigate further? This was it. The moment Jennifer had been avoiding for 8 years. No, she said quietly. I didn't investigate as thoroughly as I should have. Ms. Hoffman was a respected foster parent with an excellent record. She volunteered extensively. She had references from community leaders. And her voice caught. I made the mistake of trusting appearances over evidence. I made the mistake of believing that someone who looked good on paper couldn't be engaging in systematic abuse of a child. Ms. Torres, are you saying you failed in your duty to protect Autumn? Tears streamed down Jennifer's face. Yes, I failed. I saw the warning signs and I didn't act decisively enough. I prioritized maintaining a working relationship with a respected foster parent over thoroughly investigating multiple concerning reports. And because of my failure, Autumn suffered for 8 years. The courtroom was silent. But I'm not making that mistake again, Jennifer continued, her voice growing stronger. I'm testifying today not to excuse my actions, but to ensure the full truth comes out. I've turned over every file, every report, every piece of documentation to the prosecution. I've requested a full department audit of Ms. Hoffman's other placements, and I've submitted my resignation from Child Protective Services because I no longer trust myself to make the decisions that keep children safe. The prosecutor nodded. Thank you for your honesty, Ms. Torres. As Jennifer left the stand, she looked toward the back of the courtroom where Autumn sat between Rachel and Miguel Martinez. Autumn met her eyes, and then slowly, Autumn raised her hand, the sign for thank you. Jennifer nodded, tears still falling, and walked out of the courtroom knowing she couldn't undo the past, but she could help ensure justice, moving forward. The prosecution's case built systematically over the next 3 weeks. Dr. Washington testified about Autumn's injuries and the clear evidence of long-term abuse. Detective Miller presented the financial evidence showing Hoffman's pattern of insuring foster children. Neighbors testified about seeing Autumn locked outside in winter. Teachers testified about unexplained absences and concerning behavior. And then, on a cold Monday in March, Raven Morrison took the stand. The defense attorney, a sharp-dressed man named Edward Carlson, stood to cross-examine her. Ms. Morrison, he began, his tone skeptical. You're a member of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, correct? Yes. A group known for criminal activity and violence? Objection, the prosecutor called. Relevance? I'm establishing the witness's credibility, Your Honor. Overruled. But make your point quickly, Mr. Carlson. Carlson turned back to Raven. Ms. Morrison, isn't it true that you and over 300 motorcycle club members surrounded Ms. Hoffman's home and prevented her from leaving? Isn't that essentially kidnapping? Raven's expression didn't change. We secured the scene and prevented a suspect in an ongoing abuse case from fleeing or destroying evidence. We maintained order until law enforcement arrived. We didn't touch Ms. Hoffman. We didn't threaten her. We documented evidence and coordinated witnesses. But you had no legal authority. We had moral authority, Raven interrupted. We had a child signing for help in ASL because she'd learned that adults don't always listen when children speak. We had visible evidence of abuse, and we had a duty as human beings to protect someone who couldn't protect herself. Isn't it true that you wanted to be a hero? That you saw an opportunity for publicity? Raven leaned forward slightly. Mr. Carlson, I've been riding with the Hells Angels for 15 years. We do toy runs for children's hospitals. We escort abuse survivors to court. We raise money for veterans. We stand up for people who have no one else standing up for them. Not for publicity, not for recognition, because it's the right thing to do. She paused, her voice quieting but gaining intensity. I saw a child in distress using sign language to ask for help. I remembered what it felt like when I was young and nobody believed me. So yes, I acted, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat, because Autumn deserved someone to finally see her, to finally believe her, to finally do something. The courtroom was silent. Carlson shifted tactics. But how can the court trust your version of events when you have a clear bias against my client? Raven met his eyes steadily. My bias is that I believe children shouldn't be subject to abuse. My bias is that adults have a responsibility to protect vulnerable people. If that makes me unreliable in your opinion, then I'll gladly accept that label. No further questions. The verdict came on a Thursday afternoon in late March, 4 months after Autumn's rescue. The jury had deliberated for 6 hours. Patricia Hoffman sat at the defense table, her expression carefully neutral, her designer suit pressed and perfect. She looked like a victim of circumstance, like a good person caught in a misunderstanding. But the evidence told a different story. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. The forewoman stood, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a firm voice. On the count of child abuse in the first degree, We find the defendant guilty. Patricia Hoffman's mask cracked. Just slightly. A tightening around her eyes. On the count of criminal abuse in the 2nd degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of assault in the 3rd degree, we find the defendant guilty. Count after count. Guilty, guilty, guilty. By the time the forewoman reached the 15th count, insurance fraud, Hoffman's hands were shaking. We find the defendant guilty. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks later. The day of sentencing, the courtroom was packed again. But this time, Autumn was there not just as a victim, but as a survivor, ready to speak. Dr. Washington had worked with Autumn for 4 months. Trauma therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, art therapy, music therapy. Slowly, carefully, helping Autumn find her voice again. And on this day, Autumn had chosen to use it. Judge Rebecca Martinez, no relation to Miguel and Rachel, called the court to order. Does the victim wish to make a statement before sentencing? The prosecutor nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Autumn Daniels has prepared a victim impact statement. Autumn stood. 17 years old, but looking younger, dressed in a simple blue dress that Rachel had helped her pick out. Her hands trembled as she walked to the witness stand. The courtroom was completely silent. Autumn pulled out the leather journal Raven had given her 4 months ago. It was full now. Hundreds of pages. Her story, in her own words. She opened to a page she'd marked with a purple ribbon. And then, for the first time in 8 years, Autumn spoke out loud. Her voice was quiet at first. Rusty. Like an instrument that hadn't been played in years. But it was there. My name is Autumn Daniels, she began, and her voice grew stronger with each word. For 8 years, I lived in Patricia Hoffman's house. For 8 years, I was told I didn't matter, that nobody would believe me, that I deserved what happened to me. She looked up at Hoffman, who sat stone-faced at the defense table. You took my voice. You made me believe that speaking would only make things worse. You hurt me, and then you told me it was my fault. You locked me outside in winter and said I was being punished for my own good. You starved me and called it teaching discipline. You burned me and called it necessary correction. Autumn's hands gripped the journal tighter. But you were wrong. About all of it. I did matter. People did believe me. And what happened wasn't my fault. It was yours. She turned to look at Raven, who sat in the front row next to Miguel and Rachel. Raven Morrison saw me. She believed me when I signed for help. She and 310 other people showed up because they understood something you never did. That children deserve protection. That vulnerable people deserve dignity. That when systems fail, sometimes the people society calls dangerous are the ones who step up and do what's right. Autumn looked back at the judge. For 8 years I survived. I learned ASL from library books, so I could communicate without words. I memorized abuse patterns, so I could predict when things would get worse. I found small ways to hold on to hope, even when everything seemed hopeless. Her voice cracked, but didn't break. I'm not asking for your pity. I'm asking for justice. Not just for me, but for Daniel Reyes, who caused death before anyone heard his story. For the other children Patricia Hoffman fostered and hurt. For every child in the system who's suffering right now because someone like her knows how to look good on paper while being terrible behind closed doors. Autumn closed the journal. I'm going to be okay. I have people who love me now. I have therapy and support and a chance to heal. But Patricia Hoffman needs to be held accountable, not just for what she did to me, but for what she represents. A system that values appearances over truth, that trusts adults over children, that allows predators to hide behind respectability. She looked at Hoffman one final time. You tried to take my voice, but I'm speaking now, and I want you to hear me. I survived. I'm still here, and you will never hurt anyone else again. Autumn stepped down from the stand and walked back to her seat between Rachel and Miguel. Rachel wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Miguel squeezed her hand. And in the front row, 310 Hells Angels members crowded into every available seat and standing in the hallway outside, raised their fists in silent solidarity. Judge Martinez delivered the sentence 30 minutes later. Patricia Hoffman, you have been convicted of 15 counts related to the systematic abuse, neglect, and exploitation of vulnerable children in your care. The evidence presented at trial showed a pattern of predatory behavior spanning nearly a decade. You used your position as a foster parent, a position of trust, to inflict harm on children who had no one else to protect them. The judge's voice was cold and precise. You hid your actions behind a facade of respectability. You manipulated systems designed to protect children. You prioritized financial gain over human welfare. And when finally confronted, you showed no remorse. Judge Martinez leaned forward. The purpose of sentencing is threefold: punishment, deterrence, and protection of society. In your case, all three require significant incarceration. She read the sentence count by count. 25 years for the child abuse charges, 10 years for the assault charges, 15 years for the insurance fraud. Sentences to run consecutively, not concurrently. 50 years total. Patricia Hoffman, age 46, would be 96 years old before she was eligible for parole. Additionally, Judge Martinez continued, you are permanently barred from any contact with minors, from serving as a foster parent, and from receiving any insurance benefits related to children. Your assets, including the life insurance policies you fraudulently obtained, will be liquidated to establish a compensation fund for your victims. Hoffman's face crumpled. For the first time, genuine emotion showed through. Not remorse, but rage and fear. The bailiff led her away. As the courtroom began to empty, Raven walked over to where Autumn stood with the Martinez family. You did good, kid, Raven said quietly. Really good. Autumn looked up at her, at the woman who'd seen a child's desperate signs and decided to act, who'd mobilized an army to ensure justice, who'd taught Autumn that her story mattered. And then Autumn did something she hadn't done in 8 years. She smiled. Epilogue. 3 years later, Autumn Daniels, now 20 years old, stood at the podium in the Portland Convention Center, addressing a crowd of 500 social workers, therapists, and child welfare advocates. My name is Autumn Daniels, she began, her voice strong and clear now, and I'm a survivor of foster care abuse. She'd been speaking publicly for a year now, telling her story, advocating for policy changes, training social workers to recognize signs of abuse they might miss. When I was 12 years old, I used American Sign Language to ask for help because I'd learned that adults don't always listen when children speak with words. A woman named Raven Morrison saw those signs and believed me. She and 310 members of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club showed up to make sure I was safe. Autumn clicked to the next slide in her presentation. It showed a photograph from that day. Autumn wrapped in a blanket, surrounded by bikers, their motorcycles forming a protective barrier. This image has become symbolic of something important. That sometimes the people society fears are the ones who show up when respectable systems fail. That true protection comes not from appearances, but from action. That believing children, truly believing them, requires adults to look past surface-level reassurances and investigate thoroughly. She advanced to the next slide. Statistics on foster care abuse, numbers that made the audience murmur in discomfort. 30% of children in foster care experience abuse or neglect. 30%. That's not a system working. That's a crisis. And it persists because we've created a culture where appearance matters more than truth, where maintaining relationships with respected foster parents matters more than listening to children, where red flags get explained away because someone looks good on paper. Autumn's expression softened slightly. But here's what I learned. Change is possible. Since my case, Oregon has implemented new policies. Mandatory quarterly medical exams for foster children, unannounced home visits, requirements that social workers interview children alone, away from foster parents, financial audits to detect insurance fraud, anonymous tip lines specifically for foster children. She smiled, and there was hope in it. I also learned that healing is possible. I graduated high school with honors. I'm majoring in social work at Portland State University. I have a family who loves me. Miguel and Rachel Martinez officially adopted me 2 years ago. I have friends. I have a future. I have a voice. Autumn clicked to a final slide. It showed a photo of her and Raven standing together at a Hells Angels charity event, both smiling. And I learned that heroes don't always look the way we expect. Sometimes they wear leather vests and ride Harley-Davidsons. Sometimes they're part of group society tells us to fear. Sometimes the people who save you are the ones who know what it's like to be judged unfairly, to be dismissed, to be told you don't matter. She paused, letting her words sink in. Raven Morrison saved my life. Not just physically, but spiritually. She taught me that my story mattered, that I mattered. And she showed me that sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply choosing to see someone who everyone else has looked past. Autumn closed her presentation. I'm here today to ask you to do the same. See the children in your care. Really see them. Listen to them. Believe them. And when you see warning signs, don't explain them away. Investigate. Push harder. Make the uncomfortable calls and ask the difficult questions. She looked out at the audience of professionals who held children's lives in their hands every day. Because somewhere right now, there's a child like I was. Afraid, hurt, convinced nobody will believe them. And they need you to be the adult who finally does. They need you to be their Raven Morrison. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. That evening, Autumn met Raven at their favorite coffee shop in Southeast Portland. They'd been meeting weekly for 3 years now. What had started as trauma support had evolved into genuine friendship. You killed it today, Raven said, sliding a cappuccino across the table. I watched the live stream. That audience was hanging on every word. Autumn smiled. I learned from the best. You taught me that my story had power. Nah, kid. Your story always had power. I just helped you see it. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Portland's evening traffic through the window. I got something for you, Raven said, pulling an envelope from her vest pocket. Early graduation present. Autumn opened it. Inside was a small silver pendant on a chain. two hands forming the ASL sign for love. "It's beautiful," Autumn whispered. "When you're out there changing the world," Raven said, "I want you to remember that you're loved, that you matter, that the girl who was locked outside and told she was worthless grew up to be a woman who's saving other kids from the same fate." Autumn put on the necklace. "I still have nightmares sometimes," she admitted. "About being back in that house. About nobody believing me." "That's normal," Raven said gently. "Trauma doesn't just disappear. But you're not alone in it anymore. You've got people now, a whole army of people who've got your back." "Including 310 bikers," Raven grinned. "Especially 310 bikers. We're all pretty invested in your success at this point." Autumn laughed, a sound that still sometimes surprised her with how natural it felt now. "Raven?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for seeing me that day, for believing me, for showing up when nobody else would." Raven reached across the table and squeezed Autumn's hand. "Autumn, you saved yourself. You learned sign language. You recognized a moment when someone might understand. You asked for help in the only way you could. I just had the privilege of being the person you asked, and I'll be grateful for that for the rest of my life." As they left the coffee shop together, mentor and student, survivor and advocate, two women connected by a moment of courage and compassion, the evening sun broke through Portland's typical clouds, casting warm light across the city. Autumn looked up at the sky and thought about how far she'd come. From a girl with no voice to a woman using hers to change systems. From isolation to connection. From victim to survivor to advocate. She thought about Patricia Hoffman, serving her sentence in a federal facility, finally unable to hurt anyone else. She thought about Jennifer Torres, who'd left CPS, but now volunteered with a foster care reform organization, trying to prevent other children from falling through the cracks she'd failed to see. She thought about Detective Miller, still working cases, still fighting for kids who couldn't fight for themselves. And she thought about that freezing November evening when she'd signed 3 simple words: help, danger, not safe, to a stranger in a parking lot. And how those 3 words had changed everything. Justice had been served. Patricia Hoffman was in prison. The system was changing, however slowly, but more than that. Autumn had found something Patricia Hoffman had tried so hard to take from her. Her voice, her power, her proof that she mattered. And she was using them all to make sure no child would ever be silenced again. Where are they now? Autumn Daniels graduated with her MSW from Portland State University in 2028, and now works as a foster care advocate and trainer. She's currently lobbying for federal legislation to improve oversight of foster care placements. She still speaks publicly about her experiences and has helped dozens of foster children find their voices. She remains close with the Martinez family and considers Rachel and Miguel her parents in every way that matters. Raven Morrison continues riding with the Hells Angels and has become the club's primary liaison for child advocacy work. She helped establish Silent Signals, a national program teaching first responders and service workers to recognize nonverbal distress cues from children. She's received multiple community service awards, which she displays reluctantly but proudly in her garage, next to photos of the kids she's helped over the years. Detective Sarah Miller was promoted to head the Crimes Against Children unit. She's pioneered new investigation protocols specifically designed to detect long-term abuse in foster care settings. The Chen Protocol has been adopted by police departments in 17 states. Jennifer Torres works with Foster Care Reform Alliance, a nonprofit focused on improving social worker training and oversight. She speaks openly about her failures in Autumn's case, using her experience to teach others how to recognize when appearance contradicts evidence. She's helped rewrite training manuals used by Child Protective Services agencies nationwide. Patricia Hoffman is serving her 50-year sentence at Coffee Creek Correctional Facility. She's eligible for parole in 2074, when she'll be 96 years old. She's expressed no remorse. The compensation fund established from her liquidated assets has provided over $800,000 to her victims for therapy, education, and living expenses. Miguel and Rachel Martinez officially adopted Autumn in 2024. They continue providing emergency foster care and have helped 6 other children transition to safe, permanent placements. Miguel started a support group for foster parents focused on trauma-informed care. Rachel completed her ASL certification and teaches signing classes specifically for foster families. The Hells Angels. Oregon and Washington chapters expanded their child advocacy work significantly after Autumn's case. They now partner with multiple organizations focused on child welfare, including running an annual toy drive that collects over $500,000 in gifts for children in foster care and abuse survivors. Members volunteer as court escorts for abuse survivors testifying in trials. The club's motto, "When nobody else will, we will," has never been more true. The universal message. Autumn's story reminds us that sometimes the most important act of courage is simply choosing to see someone who everyone else has looked past. It reminds us that heroes don't always look the way we expect. Sometimes they wear leather vests and ride motorcycles. It reminds us that systems fail, but people don't have to. Most importantly, it reminds us that children deserve to be believed. That when they ask for help, whether with words, signs, or silent desperation, adults have a responsibility to act. Not to explain away concerns, not to trust appearances over evidence, but to investigate thoroughly, push harder, and make the uncomfortable decisions that keep vulnerable people safe. Because every child matters. Every child deserves protection. And every child deserves someone who will finally see them, believe them, and show up when it matters most. If you see something, say something. If a child asks for help, believe them. And if systems are failing someone vulnerable, be the person who refuses to look away. Be someone's Raven Morrison. Because somewhere right now, a child is desperately hoping that someone, anyone, will finally see their silent signal. Will you be the one who does?